What can we expect from the 7th Sochi Autodrome race? Hello, my name is Alex Does F1 Stuff and welcome back to another pre-race review for round number 10 ahead of the Russian Grand Prix around the Sochi Autodrome circuit. So first things first, I am still a little bit ill. You can possibly hear it in my voice, I'm just a tiny bit nasally, but not to worry, we are still doing a pre-race review today. It feels like it's been a really long time since I've done one of these. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks, but 2 weeks after like 3 triple headers. 3 triple headers we've had with only 2 weeks in between. Having now 2 weeks off between the next couple of Grand Prix, it's going to feel like a lifetime between recording sessions like these. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's take a look at where we've left off in the championships. And this is the Drivers' Championship so far. We've got Lewis Hamilton just storming away. I think he's 53, I'd need to check. So yes, we have Lewis Hamilton 55 points clear of Valtteri Bottas in P2, who is now comfortably clear of Max Verstappen, who has failed to score in the past 2 races. We then have a massive gap to the midfield, which is headed by Lando Norris from Alex Albon after his first podium, and then we have Lance Stroll. And as for the constructors, it is again much the same, with Mercedes just pissing off into the distance in front of Red Bull, who find themselves ever so slowly being caught by that midfield bunch, with AlphaTauri after 2 fairly decent races and winning in Italy have brought themselves up into that midfield fight, especially with Ferrari. But anyway, let's take a look at the weather for Sochi, and on Friday it is looking pretty nice and toasty warm, 28 degrees and 64% humidity. That is going to be absolutely disgusting, which means on Saturday there are scattered thunderstorms with a 40% chance of precipitation. Now, that's quite low, and in Formula 1 terms, we had a race, I think it was in Belgium, where there was a 100% chance of rain and nothing came. So I don't know if 40% is going to mean anything, but to see scattered thunderstorms, we might just get some rain. And then on Sunday, I don't know why my animations are being so slow this morning, but anyway, Sunday, nothing. It's going to be sunny, and that's a bit of a shame. And the tyres that Pirelli are bringing to the Sochi Autodrome are the softest range that they have, the C3, C4 and C5 compounds, which I think ever since they had their first race here in 2014, they've actually brought the softest compounds, as the tyre or the track just isn't very abrasive and the tyres don't last like an incredibly long time, even the softest range of compounds that Pirelli have. But anyway, with the weather and the points update and the tyres all out of the way, let's move on into the teams, and we are going in order of the Mugello finishing positions. So first up, we have Mercedes. They have been unbroken so far the past 6 years in Sochi and in Sochi's history, so expect them to do well again, I suppose. However, like I said in the previous pre-race review for Mugello, it is the race in which Bottas needs to perform. He traditionally goes well against his teammates at Russia, but last year or was it 2018 we saw the team orders come into play where they swapped or he wasn't allowed to attack. Personally, I feel if that happens this time out, that's really crappy, because Hamilton's got a 50+ point lead over Bottas so far. Mercedes are enjoying an enormous lead in the Constructors' Championship. There's no need to deploy team orders, so it would just be really crap if they do. And I do feel that Bottas might actually just win this Grand Prix. But to Red Bull and Alex Albon, he's finally had a decent race. Finally a podium on the 3rd time of asking. However, as Max Verstappen has said, I think it was regarding actually Pierre Gasly and his victory in Italy, he said one race does not define your career. And I feel that can be perfectly applied to Alex Albon. One race and one podium isn't going to make everyone disappear, all the critics disappear, they're still going to stay there. And if anything, it's going to make it a bit harder, as he's now going to have to perform, as we've seen him get a podium. And do I think that's going to come in Sochi? No, unless there is a retirement for either Max or one of the Mercedes, you never know. Unless there is some action-based events, such as the ones in Mugello, or even Italy, sort of scale of turbulence, throwy-uppy randomness in the race, that's when Alex Albon will capitalise, whereas on raw pace, no, unfortunately I don't think he will. And then speaking of Max Verstappen, again, I think he's just going to be the third best car on that grid. But to Renault now, and I always have a trouble finding decent pictures of Renault because they upload crap photos. And they're not professionally made, apart from the ones like these. They're just sort of taken in the garage and just uploaded as a raw photo. I want like one on the track, but they hardly ever upload those. Anyway, they've actually had an upturn in pace, and Sochi is a very similar track to Mugello. It's got one nice long sort of straight with a tiny little kink in it that doesn't count as a corner, but it should. And then it's also got some high-speed corners and some sort of slow twiddly bits. So hopefully, Renault might just continue their decent form, but again, I don't think they're going to get a podium unless it is a topsy-turvy race, but I feel we've sort of used up all of our topsy-turviness in Italy and Mugello. And as for Esteban Ocon, he does really need to perform and start slowly outperforming Daniel Ricciardo, which he just hasn't been this whole season. We're at the halfway point now, we're over halfway through, and I think there's only been a handful of occasions where he has actually outqualified and outraced Daniel Ricciardo. And to Racing Point, they seemed decent actually in Mugello. They seemed quite comfortable up until Lance Stroll had his massive accident and the marshals completely dissected his car and filled it full of foam. They were running quite well and definitely sort of battling with the Renaults. I'm not sure what's going to happen in Sochi. They have a sort of Mercedes setup, if you want to call it that, so perhaps they may do a little bit better, but if you want to say they're going to be the third best team, I think that's a little bit early to start saying they will be the third best team, as I think Renault and maybe even McLaren might just be up there. And then talking about McLaren, they still hold on to P3 in the Constructors' Championship. And again, if it wasn't for Sainz retiring and getting caught up in the Mugello Mayhem incident at the restart, they'd have actually had some decent points come through at Mugello. So hopefully, oh Christ, they can continue that performance going into Sochi. As their car does seem to suit that track, as they did really well when they had the Honda engines there, as it's not really a power dependent track apart from that long straight. That's all you've got that's power dependent. The rest of it is just short little punches out of corners, which any engine can sort of do. So it sort of nullifies an engine advantage that people have. But saying that, I feel they will be mingling with the Renaults and with the Racing Points as they have done for most of this season. And then to AlphaTauri, a team who, I don't know, they've had the most uppy-downy season on the planet. They're either just in the fringes of the points, having really decent races against the midfield and outperforming teams like Ferrari and occasionally the Renaults, or they've got races where they're miles outside of the points and they're just slow, or they have races like Italy where they end up winning the damn thing, and then you end up with a race like Mugello where one driver crashes and another does a really decent performance but only finishes P7. It's just so uppy-downy and really hard to pinpoint AlphaTauri, but I feel they're not quite a midfield team. I wouldn't classify them as a midfield team such as McLaren, Racing Point, Renault and Ferrari. They are definitely in the lower end of the field, but they're higher up than Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams, but they're not quite the midfield. They're sort of their own independent, hovering between those two lines. As for Sochi and where they're going to place, honestly, I could not tell you. Which I know isn't entirely useful, but it's the truth. And so to Ferrari, they had a decent race in Mugello, all things considered. And Sochi, I feel they may actually do okay again. I feel both cars in the points, that is going to be their target. Maybe, possibly even a car into Q3, I'm not 100% sure. As I've said with, I think it was McLaren, it's sort of a track that nullifies the gains of an engine advantage. And clearly, they're at an engine disadvantage this year. So hopefully that should see them do a little bit better. But as for individual driver performances, it would be really interesting to see if Sebastian Vettel is actually going to be able to outperform Charles Leclerc in qualifying and at least the race when both cars are actually racing on track. As I feel that's what Racing Point are now going to be looking for, especially as they've now just signed that deal for him to drive in Aston Martin next year. And then we have Alfa Romeo, a team that's picked up a considerable amount of pace in the last few races. They've seemed to have gone from the slowest car on the grid, even slower than the Williams, to now probably the 7th best car on the grid, above Williams and above Haas, as they've scored points in the last couple of races. No, that's a lie. They've only scored points in Austria and Mugello, but they've seemed to be on the fringes of the points these past few races. And I genuinely think that Q2 is again on the board for Kimi Räikkönen, and maybe, if it is a hectic race, but like I said before, I feel we've used up all of our hectic meter, or it's all gone, it's all depleted, so I feel it may just be another boring Sochi race. But if there is some action, I feel Alfa Romeo are again in the prime position to take advantage of that. And then we've got Williams, the team that really should have scored some points in Mugello, but if it wasn't for that second restart, or the third restart, yes, the third start after the second red flag, they would have actually scored some points. But unfortunately, in that last little sprint, Russell just didn't quite have the pace to keep up with the Ferrari. But anyway, with that being said, again, I feel like Williams are going to struggle, as I feel they've slipped a little bit. They've had a really decent start, or perhaps maybe it was Alfa Romeo having a bad start and then catching up, and Williams have stayed flat. I don't know, or it could be the other way round. Williams started high, Alfa Romeo low, and they've both then crossed, and they seem to have swapped over the past few races. But I do think that Q2 is on the cards for George Russell, but I don't think points are going to be on the cards, again, unless it is a hectic race, like I've said before. Will they be last though? I don't think they'll be last, as I believe that Haas are now the slowest car on the Formula 1 grid so far. Granted, Mugello isn't a particularly fair race to judge pace for Haas, as one car crashed out in the safety car restart, and that was Kevin Magnussen, and Romain Grosjean was caught up in both the first lap incident which caused the safety car restart shunt, and he was caught up in both incidents, and his car sustained a lot of damage, and he ended up finishing about 10 seconds off the pace of Russell after that 15-lap sprint to the end. But if we look a little bit further back than that, they finished last in qualifying on pace the last few races, and even in the races, they've also been lapped a lot and finished last of the race finishes. So I feel that Haas are, I would say at this point in the season, the slowest car on the grid so far, and they will definitely struggle in Sochi. But that is all I've got for you today, guys. I need to go have a drink of water because my throat is now dry, bone dry. But yes, that's all I got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next video with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.